Jai Hind everyone, my name is Ashish Kumar and I am Assistant Professor in Department of Computer Science and Engineering and the college is Ajay Kumar Garg Engineering College, Ghaziabad. Today, I am going to discuss the topic frames in HTML and the subject is web designing and the AKGEC code for this subject is KCS 052. Let's start the session. So, frames. Basically, frames are relatively new addition to the HTML standard. It will introduce first in Netscape Navigator version of 2.0. Objective of this particular frames are the firstly you have to understand and the able to knowledge about the create a frame based pages, then working with the frame set, working with the frame set, frames and no frames elements. So use the different types of attributes of the frame through which we can develop the frame or the frame elements to control the display. After that, we have to assign the target values on the particular frames. Okay. So firstly, we have to understand what is frames. A frame page is actually made up of multiple HTML pages. So when we design a frame through the multiple HTML pages, we have to insert in the browser's window pane. We have to divide the browser window pane into multiple panes, and after dividing the browser window, we have to insert the different multiple HTML pages into multiple window panes in the browser. So there is one HTML document that describe how to break up the single browser, as you can see here, break up the single browser window into multiple window panes. It is the concept of the frames. We divide the single browser into the multiple window panes and each window pane is filled with the HTML document. For example, to make a frame page with a window pane on the left and on the right requires 3 HTML pages like doc1.html, doc2.html are the pages that contains content, and the main frame, that is frames.html, is the page that describe the division of the single browser window into 2 windows pane. So we have a basically 3 frames. First one is the doc1.html. This is my first frame, and after that second frame, that is doc2.html. This is my second frame, and the last frame, and that last frame is the main frame. Main frame action is the .html. So this main frames, inside this main frame we have to insert these 2 frames, that is doc1.html and the doc2.html, as you can see here. So this is the main frame of your browser, in which we have to divide the browser into 2 panes, leftmost pane and the rightmost pane. Okay, and inside these 2 frames we have to insert this particular HTML page, because doc1.html, this is the web page. Okay, web page 1, and this is the web page 2. Okay, so web page 1 are inserted into this pane, or web page 2 inserted into this particular right pane. and overall these two frames are inside in the main frame called as a frames.html. So as you can see here, we have to divide our browser into multiple frames, and inside these multiple frames we have to insert the multiple web pages called as a doc1.html or doc2.html. Are you understood? Okay. Then we have to discuss the frame page architecture. For developing the frame architecture, we have to understand what are different types of HTML element through which we can develop the frame. So first frame element called as a frame set element. This element is placed in the HTML document before the body element. Important point. Whenever you develop the frames in your browser screen, so inside the HTML structure, when you develop the coding inside the HTML code, we have to mention frame set element before the body section. And actual frame set describe the amount of screen real estate given to the each window pane by dividing the screen into rows or column. So we have to divide the browser screens either in the form of rows or either in the form of column. Let us take an example. Suppose this is your system, okay, and this system called as a client, or we can say that this is your front end, right? So browsers are running onto the client side. On browser screen we have to divide, then we have to divide the browser screen into two parts, either into the rows or either into the column. Suppose I am dividing this particular screen into the two rows, so we have to divide this screen into the row wise, row 1 and row 2. This row 1, inside this particular row 1 we have to insert multiple different HTML pages. I will describe the implementation part of this particular frame later on. Firstly, we have to understand how we can divide the browser screen into multiple frames. So similarly, on second row we have to insert the multiple web pages. Further, we have to divide this particular screen either in the form of column. So for column purpose, you have to divide the screen into column wise, column 1 and column 2. In column 1 you have to insert the web page. Similarly, in column 2 you will insert the web pages as a HTML. Okay. So the frame set will then contain frame elements, one per division of the browser window. As you can see here, one per division for one frame and for the frame number 2. So here is the basic schema about the frame page architecture. As you can see here, this is the structure code of an HTML in which we have to define the frame. So for providing the frame, we have to insert the frame element called as a frame set. As you can see here, this is the frame set element through which we can divide the browser window. Okay. So frame set calls means column. So through the calls we will divide the browser screen into the column base. So column base either 23% or 77%, or you can take as a pixels, right? As I can take as a 23% or 77%, okay, because we have a screen as a 100%, right? So through the frame set calls, this screen divided into the two panes, one pane 23% and this frame 77%, okay. So then after dividing the browser screen, then we have to implement the multiple web pages onto this multiple panes. So for how we can insert the multiple web pages inside this particular panes, through the command frame src. Frame src, src stands for what? Source. So frame src doc1 html, similarly frame src doc2 html. Doc1 html insert into this particular pane and the doc2 html are insert into this particular right pane. So this is the basic frame page architecture. Then diagram below is a graphical view of the document described above. So here is the structure, frame page architecture, and here is the diagram. So as you can see here, frame set call divided into the 23% or 77%. So this pane belongs to the 23%. Similarly, this frame belonging to the 77%. Okay. Now we will discuss frame set container. So inside this frame set container, firstly we have to understand the frame set. So frame set elements creates division in the browser window in a single direction. This allow you to define the division either in the form of rows or column. So we divide the pane either row wise or column wise. So if we divide the pane row wise, then what it stands for? It determines the size and number of rectangular rows within a frame set. They are set from top of the display area of the bottom. So possible values of rows either in the form of percentage or pixel. As you can see here, absolute pixel unit, that is 360 120, or percentage of screen height, that is 75% or 25%. Similarly, same concept for column. So they are set for from left to right of the display area, and the possible values either in the pixel or the percentage, 480 160 and 75 and 25. Then there are different attribute by which we can provide the border color, border thickness. So this is the frame border. So through the frame border element, we decide the border of the particular pane. So possible values are 0, 1, yes, no. A setting of 0 will create a borderless frame. If you provide the value 0, that means there is no such border of the particular frame. Then border thickness of the frame, this attribute is specified in pixel. Border color, this attribute is allowed you choose a color for your border, or this attribute is rarely used. Then we have to talk about the frame. So this frame element defines a single frame within a frame set. There will be a frame element for each division created by the frame set element. As you can see here, frame. So through the frame we have a attribute as a src. So src requires, as it provides the URL for the page that will be displayed in the frame. So through the SRC stands for what? Source. If you providing the name like frame name like top frame, bottom frame, right frame, left frame. So through the name required for the frame, that will allow targeting by other HTML document. Okay. Then here are some other attributes called margin width, margin height. Margin width optional attribute stated in pixel, margin height optional attribute stated in pixel. It determines vertical space between the frame and content. Okay, so margin height determines the vertical space between the frame content and the frame border. Then another attribute and the important attribute called as a scrolling. So scrolling is used to display in the frame. So possible values are yes, no or auto. If you providing the value of scrolling is yes, it means it always display scroll bar. As you can scroll the mouse, so your screen is scrolled from bottom from top to bottom. Similarly, no means if you providing the value of scrolling is no, never display scroll bar, and providing the value of scrolling is auto, it browser will decide based on the frame content. So by default scrolling is auto. Okay, so as you can see here, this is a compound frame set division. Here we have to divide the compound frame. So frame set 120 by this. Similarly, inside this row we have to mention this particular HTML element. Similarly, for frame set calls, we have to divide the call as a 120 comma asterisk 120 comma asterisk. So you may want to create a frame design within a combination of rows and column. Okay. So here is the example of the compound frame set division. As you can see here, frame set rows, we have to divide the browser into the 3 rows, 25%, 50%, 25%. Similarly, frame set calls 25% asterisk. So here is the example of this particular structure. So firstly, we have to divide the browser screen into the 3 rows, that is 25%, 50% and 25%. So as you can see here, 25%, here is the second row, 50%, and here is the third row, that is 25%. Similarly, for frame set call, that is 25% and rest of the remaining. So 25% for call and rest of remaining portion. Okay. Then we have to insert the multiple HTML pages inside these frames. Okay. So frame created with the frame set rows 50 by 50. As you can see here, we divide the browser screen into the 2 rows, that is 50% of this frame and the another 50% of this frame. So here is the browser screen divided into the 2 rows, row 1 and the row 2. Here another example of column wise, we divided our screen, browser screen into the column wise. So 50 by 50 column wise. So command is the frame set calls 50 by 50. Here we use the combination of rows and column. So through the frame set rows 50 by 50 and calls 50 by 50, we divide the browser screen into the rows as well as the column, as you can see here. So this particular 50 by 50 rows and this particular column wise 50 by 50. Next attribute, that is the target, and the target attributes use the name attribute of the frame element. If we were to place a link in doc1 HTML, that link to the doc3 HTML, and we wanted doc3 HTML to be displayed in the right window pane. So using the target value, we have to specify this frame into the right pane. As you can see here, AHREF, that is anchor hyper reference of this page, is visible, now visible to the in right pane. So through the target we defined the target value, or we have to specify this frame is visible on the right pane. So where we have a 4 special target names that can not be assigned by the name attribute of the frame tag. So first one is the target top, target blank, target self, and the target parent. Okay. So here as an example, the target attributes allow you to specify the frame into which a page is to be loaded into the frame setting. So as you can see here, chapter 1.html, and its the target is the chapter 1. So here learning HTML page is displayed in this particular frame. Similarly, this is the chapter 1, target is the parent. So parent is, this is the parent window and this is the self window. So parent inside the parent window, chapter 2.html web page is visible. Okay. So I will show you how we can create the frame. So this is the Visual Studio Code in which we have to develop the multiple web pages or different programming also work on this platform. So firstly we have to define 3 frames. Okay, as you can see here, this is our frame 1, this is the frame 2, and this is the frame 3. Okay. So firstly we have to define these 3 frames, or we have to maintain the one frame called as a main frame, in which we will divide these 3 frames by row wise, row 1, row 2 and row 3. So I'll just show you how I'm creating the main frame. So as you can see here, through the frame set we divide the browser screens in the form of rows, that is 30%, 40% and 30%. Okay. So we divide the browser screens into the 3 parts, row 1, row 2 and row 3. As you can see here, 30%, 40% and 30%. After division the frames, we have to insert the multiple web pages. So our multiple web pages are frame 1, that is here, frame 1, this is the frame 1, this is the frame 2 and this is the frame 3. Okay. So after division of multiple pane, that is 1, 2, 3, inside these pane we have to insert the our multiple frames as a frame name top and src where your frame is exist. So src frame 1.html, similarly our next frame name as a main, and src is the frame 2.html, then frame name bottom, and the src is frame 3.html. Let us render this particular code. As you can see here, so we divide the browser screen, we divide the browser screen into the multiple panes, that is 1, 2 and 3, and inside this pane we have to insert the multiple pages called as a frame 1, frame 2 and frame 3. So this is the frame 1, frame 2 and frame 3, right? and the division of this browser in the form of rows. As you can see here, row 1, row 2 and row 3. So, this is all about the frame in HTML, how we can implement. Here is the live demonstration. So, thank you so much.